First of all, thanks for coming out tonight. This is the first event of the fall semester in the Archway Reading and Lecture Series. As usual, I just want to thank the Department of Language and Literature and the Office of the Vice President of Academic Affairs for continuing to fund the series. Tonight, we have a poet with us. I met John McCarthy last spring at the North American Review Conference. We hung out a little bit, and I thought he'd be a good person to bring here this semester. So John is the author of Scared Violent Like Horses from Milkweed this past year, 2019, which was the winner of the 2017 Jake Adam York Prize. He's also the author of Ghost County, Midwestern Gothic in 2016, which was named a Best Poetry Book of 2016 by the Chicago Review of Books. His work has appeared in American Literary Review, Copper Nickel, Hayden's Ferry Review, New Ohio Review, and in anthologies such as The Best New Poets 2015 and New Poetry from the Midwest 2017 and 2019. He received his MFA from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. And the thing that's interesting about John is that he's not in academia. So those few professors who are here might appreciate that. So John's going to have some books for sale at the back if you're interested afterwards, and we'll have some time for some questions and answers after he finishes reading. So if you would, please welcome John McCarthy to the University of Dubuque.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all for coming on a lovely Thursday night as the temperature has broken, and it would probably be lovely to spend some time outside, so thank you for sharing your time with me, and thank you also to the department, too, for funding such a lovely series. And I don't know if every writer says this or not, but it's kind of cool, as Andrew explained, that this was the room where Kevin Costner studied during Field of Dreams, so I'm looking forward to bragging about that and telling people, and hopefully I get some brownie points for it or something. But for those of you in Andrew's class, I learned that you were reading and studying and learning about the ekphrastic poem, and that you had just written some ekphrastic poems. So before I read from Scared Violent Like Horses, I will go ahead and read a poem forthcoming from a poem in a new collection that is a ekphrastic poem. And also, it turns out that you did look at this painting. And the poem by Auden, Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. So I'll begin with this poem. It is titled, Even in a Faraway Place, the Workday is Long. Today is a small room full of people waking up all at once and turning their heads toward the sun. Over our lives, the sky grows large with a burning so bright, we only get one chance at the end of our lives to know it. Alone on the hillside, and the mule plow cleaves the land apart. There are waves below, which sound like days breaking apart or dragging on. Up here, I can't tell. Small fishing boats sigh against the wharf, rocked by steady ebb. I'm trying to escape this new day until it's gone. Then I'll want it back. In this life, my body is an impossible thing to please. All my friends have left this town. I have come to know my hands. I'm at the age of from now on, language will always fail my desires. The same work day after day. And soon the future will be full of undistinguishable sunsets that erase my labor from history. The livestock know nothing of how I toil. So I've been told to believe in God, but I think God is a longing that carries on even after death. The horehound grows from the cliff's dry rocks, and the sage and myrtle glisten like my skin heavy with sweat. So, what is holy? I've gone nowhere and know nothing of it. If I did know, would it be enough? I'm too delicate to have only been given this one body, too greedy to have only been given this one life. So I will transition now into Scared Violent Like Horses, which I've been reading from kind of nonstop since since March. And I'll begin with the titular poem, Scared Violent Like Horses. I was too young to call him a friend, but I had a classmate once who snuck up behind a horse, and now his body is made of a long time ago. He is the quiet space in my memory where he never sat next to me again. Back then, everyone I ever called a friend held fire in their fists when they talked to me. Their fists were dingy, grime-covered, and grease-slick, as if they were made of horsehair, as if they were untamed and lonely, galloping and wind-swollen. We didn't know how to talk about loss, so we made each other lose. We went to fields to see who could take the most damage. We went to fields that smelled like the boy who became an empty space on a Tuesday morning a long time ago. Now, because I am scared of time and how it moves, I look down at my fists that didn't always want to, but have hit so many friends that the broken knuckles look like bruised magnolias. Listen to me, please. When I knock or bang on the table or door and beg for attention, please. I don't know how to ask for forgiveness. I don't know how to let anything go. I don't know how to say anything else about the boy who had a buzz cut and a flat head, the boy who was kicked in the face by a horse and died looking up at the sky. The boy's father must have found his son with a crushed face, and while running back to the house with his own son in his arms, must have said something raging and spiteful to God. This memory is my starting point when I think backward and apologize for all our fists coiled tight as key rings. How could we not break the mirror we look at in the morning? How could we not swing at the different versions of our faces staring back between the fissures? The hurt and mangled parts of us loved the blood-dried brown on our skewbald knuckles, and we had nightmares of being reined in. We needed someone to help us change. We needed someone to force us into confronting the uselessness of our violence. But no one came, and our fists swelled unbridled and restless, wild and afraid. I promise I'm much more approachable than that poem would suggest. And I do not work in academia, so if you have any questions about that poem or my job, I'd be happy to answer them at the end. I've also sometimes introduced reading that poem or reading this book by saying I'm from, and when I read in the Midwest, I'm from the Midwest, you're in the Midwest. I hope you see some of the Midwest or your home in these poems, but then I realize when I read that poem, that might not be the best thing to say when I'm saying I hope you see a bit of home in this poem. So anywho, maybe you'll see a bit of home in these poems. Anyone in here an only child? 1, 2, okay, these poems are for you. This poem is for you. Portrait of the only child with tire swing. The cornfields' tassels or wicks burning toward the sky, and the fields are sutured by utility poles marching like a procession of crosses. On one side of the field, I-55 stretches out, and semi-trucks vibrate with that low drone of traveling forever, flashing their lights at one another. Hello, I'm here, goodbye. And they continue on alone. On the other side of the field, the only child hums a song of loneliness and mourning, but he doesn't know that yet. He thinks only of how the song sounds nice and matches the corn swaying as he sits on the edge of his tire swing, gripping the twisted triangle of rusted chain that twirls and pinches his fingers, his legs dangling through the center of the tire. The only child imagines this center to be the mouth of a very large slide or a cave, whose darkness is the entrance to some foreign and exotic place where flowers without names unfurl towards him like handshakes. But he is afraid to enter such dark tunnels alone. Everything is unknown, and his humming grows louder as he spins faster and mistakes his dizziness for permanence. And there is no one around him to tell him how still and quiet the fields of Illinois really are. The semi-trucks speed through, and their echoing words can be counted on like heartbeats. When the only child falls off the swing and everything above him spins, he believes every organ inside his body is a heart. All he does is throb. Is there anyone from Illinois here? Oh, awesome. What parts? Chicago? Warren? Galena? Naperville? Joliet? Awesome. Cool. So did you go to, any chance you are familiar with Benedictine?
Yep.
I went there for undergrad. Very cool. I'm in Evanston at the moment, so and I work in Chicago. Cool. Well, I'm amongst my own. Thank you. The next poem I will read is called "Until I Learn That Please is the Color of a Bruise." Made from his hands, Chris aims a gun at me. "You're dead," he says, but I don't like being the dead one, so I take off running. The chasing lasts a long time. We snag our sleeves on the tops of chain-link cyclone fences until the chasing becomes a way to see how far we can explore. Climb and run, the unbraiding of back alleys and empty lots until we end up on an acreage of private property with our own privacy and no one else around. Chris corners me under an old lean-to where a sun-damaged cigarette boat is living out the rest of its existence on top of an old hitch trailer. Here, Chris forces me to play punch for punch until I beg, "Please, stop." Until I learn that please is the color of a bruise, skin swollen and purple on the side of my throbbing arm. Everything is swollen when it starts raining. We roll our pant legs up and walk home through the wet grass. My soaked shoes as I walk are like a feeling knotting up inside my stomach that I can't explain. "This is how you stay friends when you're poor," Chris says. Our whole summer was like this, when we couldn't see that far into the future. Every day was the same. It was nice, the way we could handle a little bit of pain and return to it again day after day. So, the next poem I will read, well, not that one clearly. I grew up Catholic. I'm no longer Catholic. So some of the poems in this collection derive their titles from some Catholic traditions and subvert them in a certain way. This poem is called Confirmation. You taught me how hands could be laid, how they could touch a head and heal, but all of those hands eventually fell limp like a field, bent by threshing or a lit match dropped in water. Once, we used to dance in the corner tavern's neon light, where the pickup exhaust wafted inside like harvest dust. Life in the Midwest is like one long goodbye, because life is the same every day, and I didn't realize you had left until there was nothing but hard work and long days ending with the wind's silent dirge that sounds like trying not to die but always dies in smaller ways. Screen doors that slam shut but don't shut all the way, because the house is settled and the roof is warping from the sky, boiling over with thunder and rain. I wake up now to the flashing falling from the gutters and the water dripping through the holes in the ceiling. All I do is recall your voice like a prayer thrashing my skull that mines the night, begging our fathers in prayer, but they are begging other women in other towns. This town is not the memory I want, but I know how sadness works. It's like a kettle bottom collapsing onto the details of every thought. I shouldn't have, but I stayed in town to try and keep what I love alive, but no, that never works. We were a long time ago, and a long time ago is too hard to get back. The last time we talked, you said, we will end up like our mothers, waiting for nothing. Then you didn't come back. No, not ever. So Andrew makes these really beautiful broadsides of the visiting writer's poems, and he made a broadside of this next poem, and it's absolutely stunning. And the poem is titled On Fighting. Honest to God, it felt like someone dropped lit matches inside my skull, turned my head into a tinderbox, a raw thing. I had been hurt the way a child can only be hurt by his mother. And those motherless days were made of boys that turned my brain into blue sparks when they'd connect their fists to my chin. From a distance, we might have appeared as startling as a knife abruptly flipped open. Most of the time, on uneven ground, we'd throw hooks and haymakers, then backpedal scared. I never got knocked out, no, not once. But honest to God, my vision got so small and narrow sometimes I thought I was gonna shut off. Afterward, we'd help each other up, dust each other off, my friends and I, and talk about what it felt like to shake someone's hand after they had spent a great deal of time trying to hurt us. I have a lot of different names for what to call that feeling. Sometimes mercy, sometimes all of this is necessary, sometimes one day we will all be loved, but not yet. Truth is, I was never that skilled at slipping punches or finding angles or pivoting out of the way. I just didn't want to be alone. It was fun to stand there flat-footed and let God answer in that hard way he likes to touch a body. Again, I promise I'm more approachable than that. Please talk to me afterwards. How am I doing on time?
You're good.
Okay. I have a few more. This next poem is called Vandalism. Rust and fumes form a dirge, a dune of umber in the falling sky, falling every night like a drape across the broom grass and wild straw. Henbit sprouts from the brown rock and root-split concrete. Scraps of leather and cloth hang frayed on the high fences, wire cut and pulled apart by thieves coming at night for copper scrap inside the Pillsbury plant and its hollow guts. It is abandoned, and we are the abandoned sons of fathers who look for work while talking with their hands. Do you think we'd work here, I asked Seth, if it didn't close? We walk on the train tracks cutting through the iron-laid yard where spare train cars halt and tilt on diverging turnouts waiting for pickup by rail companies. This is the north end, and it never changes. I raise my spray can and ask what I should tag on the rusted rail car. We're both at a loss for words. Already aware profanity doesn't get anyone to notice us, I push the nozzle down. I write my name instead. Excuse me. So I don't know if I mentioned this. I did ask you where you were from in Illinois. I'm from Springfield. Has anyone been to Springfield? Yeah. I spent 23 years in Springfield. And so this book is more or less an autobiography about my time in Springfield. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. In honor or not in honor, depending what you believe in, this poem is in honor or not in honor of weed being legalized. When you're young, you always take too much. As if life had drawn some predictable divide between the driver and passenger sides, 2 boys and 2 girls each occupy half of the car, and the 4 of them fill the cabin with that naive sense of youth that believes it can usher everything lost or dead back into existence if they drive around long enough in the freezing light of January. They take turns one-upping each other, sharing stories about family members who have died on their own or for causes they didn't believe in. The ending always involves needles or bullets and a graphic depiction of the body's humiliation. Their faces contort and give way to a grim silence before telling a dark joke, laughter breaking out with the undeserved assuredness that they will always be able to grow their hair long in the name of some indescribable anarchy. Even now, as they park, crack the windows, and pull the glass pipe to their lips, exhaling a cone of smoke into the frost-bitten air, where it disappears upward in aleatoric fashion, like the music they love and sing to each other at night because they lack full personalities, and where the snow covers a field that, in the spring, will turn into rapeseed. They take turns passing the bowl as the sun falls through the naked trees like someone startled by the piercing of skin. For a few minutes, everyone loses themselves staring at the muted fields that look like a future that hasn't become anything yet. It's this thought that brings them hurtling back through their heads and imposes on them a self-consciousness and fear, making them unable to enjoy the high they possessed a short while ago. Eventually, one of the boys panics, says, "I need to go home now." And the other 3 look at him as if his statement was the most important story ever told. The other 3 force a laugh, trying to save the mood that is now silently out of control. They all want to go. The other 3 are just glad they didn't have to say it. So, I have 2 more. So there's a place in central Illinois called Cornland, and it's like almost at the geographic center of the state, and I just find that very pleasing. I don't know why, it makes me happy. So I wrote a poem. That was the year nothing ended. All that noise we knew as the silence of Illinois. Cornland is the name of a town close to the geographic center of the state. You laughed when you said, "There's something so Midwestern about that name, but you can't tell me what it is." It seemed like all year the tractors cut beans and I had something caught in my throat. Barbed wire, fences stretched the length of the field like silver garland. If we're not working, we're trying to feel new ways to enjoy our home we can't sell. Mostly, I feel like we're obstructing the wind, our barn spires like obelisks and abandoned silos like smokestacks holding their breath. What else do you want? What else do you want me to see when you look out into the harvest dust at night? Tell me. It's all I have. These doors off level with their frames, the porch sunken at an angle. Sometimes it's nice. Please, don't say it's not enough. It will never be enough. So I have this last one, and this last poem is actually the first poem that I ever had translated. Someone translated it for me. I was in Croatia, and the people I was staying with, they run this residency, and they were like, we'll translate some of your poems into Croatian and then post them on the website. And I was like, that sounds cool. So this poem is also in Croatian if anyone speaks Croatian. I'm not going to read it in Croatian. Same old story. All the names spray painted at the base of the abandoned silo, they weren't ours. It was harvest season, and beneath the sky, the tenor of fall sounded like rocks thrown at its side, a dirge. There was a hitch in your step as we walked through the wheatgrass looking for a spot to be alone. The wind was picking up like it always does when telling this story, and it felt like having a flat tire on the side of a dirt road a long way from anywhere. In those moments, I know exactly what I want or what I don't want, one or the other. There's nothing to do around here, you said. I nodded, but I'm not really sure what I meant by nodding. We listened to a weather vane sway. It sounded like rust, or it was a gate opening and closing, slamming its lift latch. I didn't know you smoked, but you stubbed a cigarette out in the dirt and flicked it away. I was spinning a pine cone in my hands. You know how it goes. It felt familiar. Then it changed. Thank you. So, yeah, I invite any questions, Q&A time. Let me just take a sip of water first. What's up?
You kind of teased us with you're not an academic, but you're not starving. So how's that work?
So I have my daughter to thank. I was commuting back and forth from Evanston to Carbondale when I was in grad school, and she has friends because she's a normal, adjusted human being in this world. And one of the friends' dads runs this consultancy, and he needed a writer for a project. So I started freelancing as a writer for a few projects, writing talk paths for insurance companies, helping their underperforming agents sell more. It was very inspiring. I'm kidding. And I guess I didn't screw it up. And I guess I didn't screw it up. So then he offered me to come on full time, and so now I am a consultant right now. So we'll see. I would love to be a professor again one day. So I mean, I have my eye out, but for now, I can buy food. Yeah.
When did you start writing poetry?
I mean, I don't want to call my own stuff good, but like stuff that other people seem to like and publish, or just like poetry in general. Because I started with like writing really bad things, like really early, but I don't know if I'd call those poems. I would call those mistakes. But I mean, probably seriously, like 16. I just like happened to cross a few poetry books that resonated, and I was like, I think I can do this. And then to like my parents' chagrin, I did. So yeah, about 16, I would say. Yeah. What about you?
Not much at all.
Gotcha. Does that answer your question? Okay. Your hand was up.
Your poem, Cornland, reminded me of a poem by Galway Canal.
Yeah.
I don't even know the title of it, but I know, if I recall correctly, it begins, Then it was Dusk in Illinois, and it's about a boy playing on a cornstalk violin. I just wonder if he's an influence at all, and I don't even know if he's from Illinois, but just your poem being set in the center of Illinois just made me think of that poem.
I now have a new poem to read. I haven't read it. I am familiar with Galway, but no, I haven't read that poem. From what I have read, that's what's anthologized and everything. I have liked it, but I would not call him an influence. But maybe this poem is. You had me at Dusk and Illinois, so yeah.
Like yours, it's a fantastic poem.
Thank you.
You enjoyed it.
Thanks.
What were some of those first poets that resonated with you?
Okay. I mean, Stephen Dunn is one of them. He just is he was very accessible, and so I think there was and I don't want to say sentimentality because that seems to be a bad word among writers, sentimentality, but I don't know, we're sentimental creatures, so I don't understand why sentimentality has to necessarily be a bad thing if it's executed properly in the writing. So I would say I found that sentiment that I just said in Stephen Dunn's work, so that really resonated with me. Tracy K. Smith, our former poet laureate, I remember reading Life on Mars when it came out, and that was really pretty influential. And then, I'll have to admit it out loud on camera now, but Charles Bukowski, as an angry 17-year-old who he thought drinking beer was edgy. Of course, Charles Bukowski resonates with you a little bit. Who else? Then it just went from there. I think those three, pretty early on, I just read their work and was wow, this is really amazing. Yeah, sure.
A couple of times you said, really, I'm approachable, or something along those lines. So, what is the connection between who you are and the sort of violence of your poetry?
Yeah, so I just say that because sometimes we're up in front of a microphone, we have to have banter in between things. Otherwise, there's just this awkward silence where you sometimes just feel like you assaulted the audience with some heavy material, and you're like, man, I have to break this up now. So that's just what I fell back on in the moment right now. But who I am versus that, I think to process some of the stuff that happened that is contained within the book, I just had to write about it. And so I would say this is just a past life, a past self that's kind of captured on this page. And reading these poems, it's a self I don't recognize anymore. Moved on from that a while ago. It's kind of there, and writing a book is kind of if you listen to movie directors, they always people are talking to them about the movies, and they're I finished that movie and it was in editing for 3 years, and then it had the whole marketing campaign, and then it came out. I'm already halfway done filming my next movie. It's hard to do that, and so the same happens with the book. You finish the book. I finished the book 4 years ago, and it just came out. So it's even an exponentially longer time from who I am now versus who's in the book. And so, there's just a large separation of me changing. Does that answer your question? Cool. Anybody else?
What are you currently working on, the next manuscript?
Yeah, so the few poems I read from here are definitely in the new manuscript. So it's regionally set in the Midwest again in Illinois as a backdrop. It's not necessarily like that. And where I would say Scared Violent Like Horses is more autobiographical, personal narrative. The third one goes outside of that a little bit. As a writer, you grow in public, you write, and you have to if you're going to do this kind of confessionalism of some sort, you have to be willing to grow in public and on the page. And so I would say it's less focus on the self. The poems are still narratives. Some are still first-person narratives, but they definitely address a wider range of topics against the backdrop of the Midwest. And so I'm pretty excited about it. It's a little more formally tight, I think. But then there's a few poems that formally are kind of all over the place. So I'd say I'm focusing a little more on form than I did in Scared Violent Like Horses. But other than that, I don't want to say too much. I'm one of those people that believes the more you talk about it, the more it'll just disappear and the devil will take it away. I mean, how many people do you hear talking about writing a novel and they have never finished a novel? It's because they talk about it too much. Yeah. Well, thank you all very, very much. I have books for sale back there. I'll be hanging out for a little bit if you just want to come chat. I think we might grab a drink after, so feel free to come grab a drink after, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thank you to the department at Dubuque, and thank you all for sharing your Thursday night with me.